You're about to make the biggest comeback of this entire month. Think about a Hail Mary. People treat it like a desperate throw made when everything else has failed. But the truth is, a successful Hail Mary only works because every play before it placed everyone exactly where they needed to be. Spiritually, this last week of July can work the same way. Maybe this month tested your patience. Maybe it felt like your effort wasn't producing anything worth celebrating. But what if those delays weren't signs that you were falling behind? What if they were positioning you for a week where everything finally begins making sense? For those who are spiritually attuned, these next few days may feel completely different from the rest of the month because you're about to enter the most spiritually significant week of July. There are seasons where it feels like every step forward demands twice the effort. Then there are seasons where life starts cooperating with you in ways you almost forgot were possible. The final days of July may be the beginning of one of those seasons. Most people expect positive change to arrive all at once. They wait for one enormous breakthrough that instantly changes everything. But that usually isn't how meaningful progress begins. Instead, several small victories start appearing at the same time. A decision that finally pays off. A delay that unexpectedly works in your favor. The right opportunity arriving with better timing than you could have planned yourself. None of these moments seem extraordinary on their own, but together, they completely change the direction you're moving. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that every important season announces itself immediately. They expect clarity the moment something begins, and when they don't get it, they assume nothing meaningful is happening. But that's rarely how life works. Some seasons plant the seed, while the next season reveals why it had to be planted in the first place. That is why these final days of July deserve your attention. There is a good chance that some of the things happening right now won't fully make sense until August begins. A conversation that seems ordinary today may become incredibly important next week. A decision you're almost afraid to make now may end up opening a door you didn't even know existed. Even a delay that frustrates you today could end up protecting you from taking the wrong path too soon. Preparation often feels like confusion until the results finally arrive. This is why you shouldn't judge this week too quickly. July may not be ending with fireworks. It may be ending by quietly putting the final pieces into place. Then, as August unfolds, those pieces begin connecting one after another until you suddenly realize this wasn't the beginning of the story at all. It was the final chapter of the preparation. As this week continues, there's another pattern that deserves your attention because it has nothing to do with opportunity and everything to do with self-control. Around this period, you may feel a powerful urge to chase something that seems incredibly important in the moment. It could be recognition. It could be quick money. It could be the need to prove someone wrong, to gain someone's approval, or simply to escape the discomfort of waiting. The strange part is that these desires often feel the strongest right before they lose their power over you. That's why they become so convincing. They don't arrive because they're right. They arrive because they're making one last attempt to pull you away from something greater. Not every strong desire deserves a strong response. Before making any major decision this week, ask yourself one simple question. Will this choice still matter to me a month from now, or am I trying to satisfy a feeling that will disappear by tomorrow? That question alone can save people from mistakes they spend months trying to undo. Some opportunities are worth acting on immediately. Others only look valuable because they promise instant relief. Learning the difference is one of the greatest forms of wisdom, especially during a week where emotions can temporarily become louder than your long-term purpose. If there is one moment this entire week that deserves your full attention, it is July 29th. Not because every hour of the day carries the same energy, but because something exceptionally uncommon happens for a very short period of time. This is one of those alignments that astrologers wait months to see because it simply cannot last. On July 29th, the full moon in Aquarius arrives at almost the exact same time that Jupiter reaches a cazimi with the Sun in Leo. A cazimi happens when a planet sits in the literal heart of the Sun, not nearby, not simply in the same sign. It has to be almost perfectly aligned with the center of the Sun from our perspective. That window lasts only a few hours before it's gone again. This isn't a lucky week. It's a lucky moment. That distinction matters because people often hear about astrology and assume an entire week carries the same influence. It doesn't. Some moments are far more concentrated than others, and this is one of them. The full moon reaches its peak, while Jupiter is receiving what many astrologers consider its strongest possible contact with the Sun, creating one of the most powerful combinations of visibility, confidence, expansion, and opportunity during the entire Leo season. Another reason this final week of July feels so unusual is because the emotional landscape keeps changing. In the space of just 6 days, the moon moves through 3 completely different signs, and each one seems to have its own job before the month comes to an end. The week begins with the moon in Capricorn, overlapping almost perfectly with Saturn's retrograde station. That gives July 26th through July 28th a serious tone. It becomes a time for looking honestly at commitments, responsibilities, and the foundations you're building your future on. It's less about chasing something new and more about making sure what you're already building can actually last. Strong endings create strong beginnings. Then everything shifts into Aquarius. This is where the full moon reaches its peak on July 29th, bringing attention toward the future instead of the past. Aquarius asks bigger questions. Where are you heading? What deserves your time? What kind of life are you actually trying to create? With the lunar nodes now in a new cycle, this full moon feels less like a conclusion and more like a signal that your direction is beginning to change. Finally, the week closes with the moon entering Pisces. There is something symbolic about ending July here, because Pisces is the sign the North Node recently left behind. It almost feels like one final look over your shoulder before stepping fully into what comes next. Rather than beginning another chapter, these final hours quietly acknowledge everything you've already outgrown, allowing July to end with a sense of completion instead of uncertainty. One of the biggest misconceptions about opportunity is that it always arrives looking exciting. In reality, the opportunities that change your life often arrive carrying a price you weren't expecting. That is one of the themes surrounding this full moon. Something you've wanted for a long time may finally move within reach, but it may ask for more from you than you imagined when you first wished for it. It's easy to pray for a bigger responsibility until it actually becomes yours. It's easy to ask for recognition until people begin expecting more from you. It's easy to ask for change until change requires leaving behind what once felt comfortable. This is why July 29th may become such an important day. It doesn't just ask what you want. It asks whether you still want it after seeing what it costs. Desire is tested the moment it becomes possible. Many people love the idea of a better future, but far fewer are willing to accept the weight that comes with it. This full moon has a way of separating those two groups. If an unexpected opportunity appears, don't judge it only by what it gives you. Pay attention to what it asks from you in return. Sometimes the greatest confirmation that you're moving in the right direction is that your next step demands more courage than your last one ever did. And now, it's time for today's comment of the day. Finding the value in myself makes life choices easier. I think this is one of those lessons that changes everything once it finally clicks. When you know your own value, decisions become clearer. You stop chasing places where you're not appreciated. You stop settling for things that don't feel right. You stop making choices just to earn someone else's approval. Not because you've become arrogant, because you've become honest with yourself. Self-worth has a quiet way of simplifying life. When you know who you are, you also become much clearer about what belongs in your life and what doesn't. Thank you for sharing this. As this week comes to an end, another challenge quietly begins to appear. It doesn't always look like a problem. In fact, it usually looks like a reward. You may be offered something that feels good immediately. It could be quick praise that feeds your ego, easy money that asks you to compromise your values, attention that distracts you from your real purpose, or a comfortable shortcut that keeps you from building something far greater. On the surface, nothing about it seems wrong. That's exactly why it deserves your attention. Some rewards don't come to bless you. They come to measure you. Not every open door is leading you forward. Some doors simply test whether you've learned enough to walk past them. The difficult part is that these choices rarely announce themselves as tests. They arrive looking like answers. They promise immediate satisfaction while quietly asking you to trade away something much more valuable in the long run. The final days of July may ask you to look beyond the first impression. Before accepting what appears to be a gift, ask yourself whether it strengthens the life you're trying to build or simply satisfies the person you are for the next 5 minutes. Those are two very different outcomes, and recognizing the difference may become one of the most important victories of this entire week. One pattern appears over and over again whenever one chapter is about to end and another is about to begin. Right before things start moving forward, there is often one final moment that makes people question everything. It isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's simply an inconvenience that arrives at the worst possible time. Sometimes it's a delay when you thought you were finally making progress. Sometimes it's one disappointing conversation, one unexpected expense, one closed door, or one day when nothing seems to go the way you expected. The mistake is assuming that this moment means you've taken a wrong turn. In reality, these final tests often have a completely different purpose. They aren't there to stop you. They're there to observe you. They reveal what kind of decisions you make when life briefly stops rewarding your effort. Anyone can stay committed when everything is working. The real difference appears when progress becomes temporarily invisible. The future isn't built by your best day, it's protected by your worst one. Imagine spending weeks building momentum only to let one frustrating afternoon convince you to give up. Imagine walking away from something meaningful because one unexpected obstacle made you believe all your previous effort had been pointless. That happens more often than people realize. They don't lose because the challenge was impossible. They lose because they allow one difficult moment to erase the meaning of every good decision that came before it. This is why the end of July deserves a different perspective. If something doesn't go according to plan during these last few days, resist the urge to immediately label it as failure. Ask yourself a different question instead. Is this obstacle actually changing my direction? Or is it simply testing my commitment to the direction I've already chosen? Those are not the same thing. There is a difference between needing to change your path and simply needing to continue walking it. Many people confuse temporary resistance with permanent rejection, and because of that, they quit just before things begin moving in their favor. Persistence isn't refusing to change. Persistence is refusing to panic. The people who benefit the most from the weeks ahead are rarely the ones who experience the fewest obstacles. More often, they're the people who refuse to let one obstacle rewrite the entire story. They understood that one disappointing day cannot cancel weeks of progress unless they allow it to. So if these final days of July present one last inconvenience, don't be surprised by it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're being pushed backward. Sometimes life simply wants to know whether your commitment depends on perfect circumstances or whether you've finally become the kind of person who keeps moving even when the path briefly becomes uncomfortable. This month comes to an end. It's tempting to think of July as something that is simply being left behind. Another page on the calendar, another chapter that's finished. But that way of thinking misses what makes these final days so valuable. The most important part of July was never the number on the calendar. It was the person you slowly became while living through it. Every good decision you made this week has a future attached to it. Every time you chose patience instead of rushing, discipline instead of procrastination, honesty instead of convenience, or long-term purpose instead of short-term comfort, you weren't just improving one day. You were quietly changing the direction of the days that haven't happened yet. The calendar changes overnight. Momentum doesn't. That is why August doesn't begin from zero. It begins from wherever you leave July. Some people will arrive carrying frustration, unfinished goals, and another month of broken promises to themselves. Others will arrive carrying confidence because they used these final days to build something that doesn't disappear when the calendar changes. Think about how different those two starting points really are. One person spends the first week of August trying to recover from July. The other spends the first week of August building on top of everything July already gave them. They enter the same month, but they aren't entering with the same foundation. This is also why people often misunderstand spiritual growth. They imagine that one special date changes everything by itself. They wait for the lion's gate. They wait for eclipses. They wait for a powerful full moon. Those moments can certainly become meaningful, but they are never substitutes for the choices that prepare you to benefit from them. The opportunity may belong to everyone. The result belongs to the prepared. That is the role these final days of July can play. They give you something incredibly valuable that most people overlook. momentum before everyone else decides it's time to start again. While others wait for August to inspire them, you can arrive already moving. While others spend the beginning of the month making promises, you can spend it keeping promises you've already started honoring. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson this final week has to offer. July is not ending by taking something away from you. It's ending by handing something forward. The discipline you built, the wisdom you gained, the mistakes you finally understood, and the courage you chose when it would have been easier to quit don't stay behind on July 31st. They cross into August with you. So don't think of this as the last week of July. Think of it as the first week of the life you're preparing to live in August. Because when people look back a month from now, many will believe August was where everything changed. But you'll know the truth. It wasn't August that changed your life. It was what you decided before August ever arrived. If you're still here with me, I truly appreciate you for staying until the end. As July comes to a close, remember that these next few days still matter. Don't convince yourself that it's too late to make a good decision, to take one more step forward, or to finish this month with intention. Sometimes the smallest actions at the very end of a chapter become the reason the next one begins so much stronger. Keep believing in what you're building, even if the results haven't fully appeared yet. Progress has a way of becoming visible all at once, after weeks of feeling invisible. Thank you again for spending this time with me. I genuinely hope August brings you clarity, strength, and opportunities you never expected. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.